You ever wonder why you keep ending up in the same kind of pain? Why no matter how much you try to change your habits, people, or even environments, the ache finds its way back to you? It's not coincidence, it's a pattern. A deeply rooted, psychological call that isn't trying to harm you. It's trying to awaken you. What if the very pain that keeps showing up in your life is actually the signal of your unique purpose? Not a punishment, but a pointer. Stay with me until the end, because if you've been stuck in cycles that feel like suffering, what you'll hear today may be the moment you stop surviving your pain and start listening to it. And when you listen closely enough, you'll discover that your pain has always known where you were meant to go. You keep wondering why the same ache finds you in every chapter of your life. Different faces, different places, yet the same emotional residue remains. It is as if life has placed you in a loop, cycling through patterns you thought you had outgrown. You escape one form of suffering, only to encounter it again cloaked in another. This repetition is not random. The psyche does not work by accident. What recurs is what remains unresolved. What repeats is what remains unconscious. The pain you face again and again is not here to punish you. It is here to direct your attention to a forgotten part of yourself that longs to be seen. Pain, in this context, is a messenger. And like all messages, it will continue knocking until it is heard. Many attempt to outrun this kind of suffering, blaming people, blaming circumstances, or worse, blaming themselves. But the psyche has no interest in blame. It only seeks integration. And what demands integration is often hidden behind the veil of emotional pain. When a child is wounded, when a soul experiences betrayal, humiliation, abandonment, or fear, it often learns to bury these impressions deep in the unconscious. This act, though it protects the ego from being shattered in the moment, sets the stage for repetition. For what is not processed is not past. It is instead projected onto others, into our choices, into our relationships, until it is finally made conscious. This is why you may keep choosing the same kind of partner, the same kind of job, the same type of self-sabotage. There is no devil external to you orchestrating this torment. There is instead a sacred intelligence within, trying to guide you to the very point of fracture, because that fracture holds the blueprint of your transformation. That's where your real work begins. The work of listening to your pain not as an enemy to defeat, but as a teacher to understand. In every repeated sorrow lies a reflection, a mirror. And what it reflects is not your weakness, but your neglected strength. That is why the recurring wound is so loud. It is not asking for avoidance. It is asking for awareness. It wants to be examined. It wants to be known. The mistake most people make is thinking that purpose comes from inspiration alone. No. Purpose more often comes from suffering, understood. When you begin to recognize the thread that ties your repeated experiences together, you begin to see what life has been trying to teach you all along. The shadow is central to this understanding. The shadow, that hidden part of the self we do not wish to see, holds within it both our deepest fears and our highest callings. The reason we repeat pain is often because the shadow is not being acknowledged. It keeps calling out through the echo of our experiences, saying, "Look here, don't turn away." But we do turn away, over and over again, because facing the shadow means facing the part of ourselves we're least proud of. Our guilt, our rage, our shame. But here's the paradox: what we hide the most often contains the greatest light. The shadow is not evil, it is merely repressed truth. And all truth, once accepted, becomes power. When you begin to explore the contents of your shadow, what you fear, what you hate, what you envy, start to unravel the puzzle of your suffering. Maybe the pain that keeps returning isn't just a pattern. Maybe it's your soul saying, "You are meant to understand this. You are meant to become someone who can transform it." Think about it. Those who lead others out of darkness are often those who have walked through it themselves. Not once, but many times. And each time, they brought back a piece of wisdom, a piece of courage, a piece of truth. You are not meant to become a version of yourself that never feels pain. That is not evolution. That is avoidance. What makes a human being powerful is not the absence of struggle, but the intimacy with it. Knowing its face, knowing its voice. Not running from it, but sitting with it until it speaks. Your repeated wounds are offering you this intimacy, even though it comes cloaked in discomfort. It's asking you to stop pointing the finger outward, and instead look inward, because that's where the transformation begins. Patterns of pain are patterns of potential. The very fact that your life keeps circling back to the same emotional terrain is not a curse. It is a compass. The terrain of your pain is the terrain of your purpose. You cannot walk into your calling without first understanding what shaped your psyche. If your life is repeatedly showing you abandonment, it may be that you were born to lead others into belonging. If your pain revolves around rejection, perhaps your purpose is to help others find self-worth. These are not surface-level inspirations. These are soul-deep truths that can only emerge from having survived the storm yourself. The psyche repeats what it needs to master. Just as the body repeats movements until it builds muscle, the soul repeats experiences until it builds wisdom. You might think you're stuck, but in reality, you are being shaped. Shaped by the very things that confuse you. Shaped by the people who disappoint you. Shaped by the disappointments that refuse to let you go. There is a secret intelligence within the suffering, a logic that the rational mind may not grasp, but the deeper self recognizes. Destiny is not a straight path. It's a spiral. We return to the same lessons, again and again, not because we are failing, but because each time we return, we are offered a new layer of understanding, a new level of depth, a new opportunity to respond differently. The patterns are not punishments, they are invitations. They ask, will you finally respond from consciousness rather than conditioning? Will you meet this moment with awareness instead of fear? When you begin to see these repeating themes not as misfortunes but as messages, something shifts. You stop resenting your life story and start reading it. You stop wishing for a different past and start mining the one you have for gold. And that gold, the insight gained from darkness, that is what makes you capable of walking into a life of meaning. That is where calling is born. Not in ease, but an awakening. No one escapes this process. Those who shine the brightest often carry the deepest wounds. But they chose not to numb them, they chose to name them. They chose to face what others fled. And that choice, again and again, becomes the very thing that transforms ordinary pain into extraordinary purpose. What you suffer now, what you've suffered repeatedly, may just be the material your future self will use to build a bridge for others. But that can only happen if you stop seeing the repetition as a trap and start seeing it as a teacher. You are not abandoned by life. Life has been consistent in its invitation to understand yourself. Over and over, it gives you the same material, because within that material is the answer you keep seeking elsewhere. This is the alchemy of self-awareness. This is the beginning of wholeness. The journey into the self is not a one-time epiphany. It is a series of confrontations with what has always been true but hidden, and through that confrontation, you begin to see that your greatest calling was not somewhere out there in the distance. It was buried beneath your oldest wound, waiting for you to stop running and start listening. When you dare to face that repetition with eyes open, with hearts soft, and with soul engaged, what once felt like a cycle of punishment becomes a path of initiation, a journey toward the very person you were always meant to become. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is not merely a poetic phrase. It is a profound truth that governs the architecture of human experience. The suffering that revisits youth, betrayals, the fear of abandonment, the self-sabotage, the patterns that seem beyond your control, are not ghosts haunting you from outside. They are parts of your psyche, alive within you, yet hidden from your awareness. You may believe you're choosing your path freely, but when the unconscious is in charge, you're not choosing, you're reenacting. The same roles, the same wounds, the same emotional narratives play out in the theater of your life, as if a script was written long before you understood the words. The psyche does not forget what the ego tries to ignore. When pain is unexamined, it gains autonomy. When trauma is suppressed, it gains control. These forces move beneath the surface, like currents under a calm sea, shaping decisions, attracting certain people, provoking certain reactions. You may believe that you're simply unlucky in love, or cursed with bad timing, but in truth, you are being led by inner forces you have not yet faced. These forces are not malevolent. They are merely persistent. They will keep emerging in your life until you stop reacting and start inquiring. Why do I attract this kind of experience? Why does this kind of pain feel so familiar? Why does this chaos always find its way back to me? These are not questions of weakness. They are questions of awakening. To ask these questions is to begin the work of individuation, the process of becoming whole, by integrating all aspects of the self, not just the socially acceptable ones, the shadow, the wounds, the repressed desires. They are all part of the self that must be known. And here's the paradox. What you fear most about yourself, when brought into awareness, becomes the source of your power. Consciousness expands through the confrontation with the unconscious. You cannot step into your purpose while remaining blind to the architecture of your inner world. And the parts of your life that hurt the most are the gateways to that deeper vision. They are the places where your psyche is demanding your attention, saying, "Here, look here. Something sacred is buried beneath this pain." That's why healing is never a detour from your calling. It is the doorway into it. People think they have to wait until they're healed to begin their purpose. But it is often the act of healing that reveals the purpose itself. Your wounds are not stains. On your story, there are sentences in the paragraph of your meaning. The trauma you've carried, the pain you've endured, the darkness you've survived. These are not just burdens. They are blueprints. They are not dead weight. They are sacred instruction. When you engage with them intentionally, when you choose to learn from them rather than merely endure them, something changes. You stop being a victim of your history and start becoming a student of it. Healing is not forgetting. It is remembering in a way that sets you free. It is the process of making sense of your story so that it no longer controls you but informs you. You begin to see patterns where you once saw chaos. You begin to find strength where you once only felt weakness. And most importantly, you begin to realize that your pain has prepared you for something that only you can do, not because you are special in a grandiose sense, but because your path has carved a unique capacity within you, a sensitivity, an insight, a resilience that was born in the fire of your experience. This is not theoretical. This is real. People who have suffered deeply and chosen to heal consciously become radiant with purpose. They walk with a different kind of authority, not because they know all the answers, but because they have lived through the questions. Your purpose is not waiting for you at the end of some perfect journey. It is emerging from you as you walk through your brokenness with open eyes. It grows in the soil of your honesty. It blooms through the cracks of your past. Every scar you carry is a seed. Every tear is water. But you must tend to it. You must be willing to stay in the process long enough for the transformation to occur. And that process demands that you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to show me about myself?" That shift in inquiry changes everything. It moves you from despair to direction. And yet, purpose is not handed to you once you are healed. That is a myth. True purpose begins the moment you decide to confront the parts of yourself that you've spent your life avoiding. It's not found in a job title or a dream goal. It's found in the decision to meet your truth without flinching, and that requires courage. Because your calling does not live in comfort. It lives in the very place you don't want to go. It lives behind the mask, behind the addiction, behind the anger, behind the fear. It's there, quietly waiting for you to be brave enough to stop pretending and start becoming. The most powerful people are not those who have avoided pain, but those who have transmuted it. They've sat with their shadow. They've walked into the silence and heard what it had to say. They've cried not just because they were hurting, but because they finally understood the message in the hurt. And through that understanding, they emerged not as perfect, but as whole. And wholeness is the foundation of purpose. Wholeness does not mean you're always strong. It means you've made peace with your weakness. It means you've reclaimed the parts of yourself that were once exiled. And when you reclaim them, you become someone who can help others do the same. This is how your life becomes a lighthouse. You don't shine because you're flawless. You shine because you've been through the storm and you didn't go blind. You saw something in the darkness, and now you help others see it too. That's what your calling demands, not perfection, but presence. Not a sanitized version of your life, but a sincere one. A life that tells the truth. A life that reflects the inner work you've done. A life that invites others into their own awakening, not through preaching, but through embodiment. To follow your calling is to agree to be honest about who you are. To no longer hide behind roles, identities, or illusions. To meet your soul face to face and say, "I am willing to carry the weight of my truth." And yes, it will be heavy, but it will also be holy. Because in that weight is your wisdom. In that burden is your blessing. The world does not need more people who are pretending to be whole. It needs people who are brave enough to become it. So, if you are in the midst of a repeated pain, do not rush to escape it. Listen to it. Let it speak. Let it teach. Ask it what it wants to show you about the life you were born to live. Let it guide you into the room you've avoided, because that room holds the next chapter of your evolution. The path to purpose is not linear. It is sacred, spiral, and deeply personal. But the truth is this: you will never discover your calling by trying to be someone else. You will only find it by daring to become fully yourself. And that's real one is forged in the furnace of your most painful experiences. That is where your soul took shape. That is where your gifts were born. The gift of compassion that comes from being broken. The gift of insight that comes from having fallen. The gift of depth that comes from having suffered and survived. These are not small things. These are sacred things. And they were never meant to be hidden. They were meant to be given. But you cannot give them until you claim them. And you cannot claim them until you face the places where they were formed. So, the pain that keeps coming back to you is not here to break you. It is here to bring you back to yourself. And in that returning, something extraordinary begins to unfold. Not just for your life, but for those whose lives you will touch. Because when you face yourself, you give others permission to do the same. And that, perhaps, is the truest form of purpose there is.